Hello, hello, hello. This is Talking Manchester United, a United Stand podcast with myself, Paul Gardner, and joining me, it's a bit weird I'm saying this differently today because Ash isn't with us. So joining me is Matthew McFadden. How are you, Matthew?
Actually, really good. First podcast in the old Discord. Seeing how it goes.
Yeah, this is going to be quite something. I've got two completely new screens in front of me, Discord, OBS, and I've got no idea what I'm doing, so I'm hoping this works out. In case you guys listening are wondering what the hell's going on, we normally record that we have another guest as well. I'll introduce him in just a second. It's been announced by Google that they will be doing away with the Google Hangouts on Air service, which we used to record the podcast via YouTube. It was a good bit of kit. It meant I had to do no post-production whatsoever. I just uploaded straight into YouTube. It was fantastic. That's going to be gone. So we're trying out Discord, and it's all a little bit up in the air at the minute. I don't really know what I'm doing, but we're just going to plow on. We're going to wing it. That's what we're going to do. Anyway, joining me, as well as Matthew, is the famous Andrew. Andrew, how are you, my friend?
Paul, I am in lovely Kansas still. The skies are blue. I'm watching 30,000-pound buildings be lifted by a crane. I can't complain much.
It sounds like an absolute joy, I must say. I can see Martin is around. He is unmuted. So, Martin, if you are able to join at any point, just jump in. Guys, Martin Pert was meant to be with us this evening. He may still well join us. We'll have to wait and see. But guys, let's jump into it. So there's not much to talk about really. The last podcast was on Thursday after we played the Inter Milan game. We haven't played a game since then. There's obviously been a lot of transfer rumours going on, but I think we're getting a bit bored of that, aren't we? Maybe we'll talk about it. But the first thing I want to bring up is Alexis Sanchez. Now, I read on the Manchester Evening News, a journalist by the name of Richard Fay, he wrote an article about Alexis Sanchez and about how he can still succeed at United. Now, before I go into that, I want to get your thoughts first. So, Matthew, Alexis Sanchez, does he still have a chance at United?
I mean, we're kind of forced to give him another chance, considering no club's actually wanting to pay his wages. But realistically speaking, I don't think he's got any chance really. We give him. I mean, the guy's been on decline for 2 years now. He's not really had many summers, or at least summers off to sort of, have some rest time season because he's been in every single tournament known to man. And it just seems like that's kind of caught up to him. So as far as I'm concerned, he's, to be honest, pretty useless at the moment. Like, he doesn't even seem to be putting in any decent performances for United. So for me, one of the most expensive deadwood members that you can think of.
Fair enough. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Sorry, Matthew, were you finished then?
I was just going to say at the end, he's pretty much a Chilean Wayne Rooney at this point. He's peaked a little bit too early. Similar types of players, but still some people think, oh no, he'll come good when he's getting old. Poor for about 2 years now.
Fair enough. Andrew, Alexis Sanchez, is he done at Manchester United?
He is dead, done, and dusted, Paul. Here's the thing. When you get down to looking at what he has done during his time at Manchester United, if I saw the stat correctly, it's basically amounted to he's basically averaging $1 million per goal contribution or something like that during his time at Manchester. I think it might even be more than that at this point. But there's no reason to give this man any more match time. And I know that Ollie's my thing is, and I don't get why people are getting on to Ollie about him trying to be positive about people and him being, trying to give people kind words, because there's no point in not trying to do that. He has no purpose inside of the squad because we've got enough cover on the left wing between Dan James, Anthony Martial, and then either Angel Gomez to Heath Chong, whoever you want to play over there. There's no excuse for Alexis Sanchez play over there. Apparently, he's got to have it in his contract that he can't play on the right, because how he hasn't been playing on the right at all is just crazy to me. But and then on top of that, you add in the fact that it's going to be damn near impossible to get rid of him because of his wages. There's no purpose in having him here. It's almost just we need to cut our losses and just release him, because and that's as far as I would go, because there's no point in having him around the squad. He serves no purpose, and unless some Chinese club is going to come in and be willing to pay him what he's making, I see no way we can get rid of him, and it's very, very unfortunate.
Fair enough. Now, let me put it to you guys this way. Now, again, this is something I read earlier on today on the Manchester Evening News website. When you think back to when Sanchez was playing for Arsenal, and you think of the type of football that Arsenal played, it was quite an expansive type of football, a forward-thinking type of football, a quick-moving type of football. Since he's come to United, he's not had that. And we complain about not being able to get the best out of Pogba. Can you guys hear me?
Perfect.
Cool. We complain about Pogba not being able to perform at the top level because the players around him aren't good enough and he needs quality around him to be able to perform. You could argue the same for Sanchez. So, not only is he playing in a system which was quite defensive at times under Mourinho, but also the quality of the player around him hasn't been great. Put those two things together and fast forward to now, where Ollie's come in. He didn't get much of a chance under Ollie because of the injuries. And again, that's obviously another negative on Sanchez's part, the fact that he gets a lot of injuries at the moment. But put him in this system, which is more a forward-thinking, attacking system, which is being proven so far in pre-season, a more fluid front three, a more pace to the game. Don't you think that falls into his favour slightly in the way that he likes to play, the way that he, the team that he was at before United, Arsenal, the way they played, he thrived. Do you not think now with this new system that we've got and this new way of playing that he can't come into this system and thrive again? That's to any of you, whoever wants to jump in.
You can go to Matthew first.
Arsenal, at least when he was, hitting the heights at Arsenal, probably about 3 seasons ago or whatever. Compared to now, you can probably say that he's lost a yard of pace to. It was very much quite intense football, like you said, very expansive, and it involved a lot of wide men in the centre forwards just running absolutely everywhere to make up for the fact that Mesut Ozil doesn't really run that much. It's kind of lost a yard of pace to be able to play in that quick, high-pressing system. I think the only way in which you could possibly team is if you play a 4-2-3-1 and you play Sanchez as that number 10. Because it just seems like this really sort of tenacious forward. Someone who's not afraid to constantly be pressing the back line.
But this is
he just do that anymore.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, you mentioned 4-2-3-1. We said this in the podcast last week, if you remember, and I'm sure Andrew remembers as well. When we were talking about the system that we were playing, it looked like a 4-2-3-1. And then I think, Andrew, you may be able to chip in on this as well. I think somewhere in social media or some news outlet posted something about the shape being a 4-2-3-1 with either Gomez, Lingard or Mata playing in that number 10 role. So it could well end up being that we do play that system in the season. And again, if Sanchez has played in that role, that could suit him. This is all hypothetical. I mean, he might end up getting injured in the first game. You won't see him for 3 months. Or he may well flop, which a lot of people... And to be honest, I do expect that to happen as well. But when I read that article, it just made me think, it could work for him.
Well, here's the problem. That what we've seen during his time at United, yes, we have not seen him in this expansive, role that like everything is free flowing, blah blah blah. Make the excuses all you want for him. At the end of the day, what he has put out onto the pitch and the product that he has put down on the pitch, yeah, he provides some effort. But it's basically the Lingard effect. That Jesse Lingard runs his butt off 9 times out of 10. But at the end of the day, there's no end product, and it appears that Alexis Sanchez's end product has completely disappeared. We can't continue to make excuses for him. And I'm sorry, his time at United just needs to be done. We cannot continue to allow him to waste the fans' time, to waste our time, and to waste everybody's time, because that's exactly what's going on if we try and keep him. Because then you're basically making the excuse that, oh, we've got somebody that's in place that has the talent. They've got the talent, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? People's talent goes away. Wayne Rooney's talent, like, there's a reason why he's playing in the MLS now. There is a reason. And we can't continue to hold on to Alexis Sanchez. We just can't do it.
No, I think, I see what you're saying with the Rooney comparisons as well. We did see a sharp decline. Well, I don't know if you could call it a sharp decline with Rooney, really. I think even that was gradual. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to disagree with both of you. I don't think his time is quite finished. I don't think he is finished as a player. Maybe that's just me, I don't know, wanting him to succeed, because we need goals. When you look at last season, we that's one area, or the main area that we lacked is goals. And I think that Sanchez has goals in him. Obviously, he didn't prove that or show that at all last season. But I don't know. It's just, maybe it's wishful thinking. But I would like to think that in this new system, that he can thrive. I want him to anyway. I guess we all want him to. But when you think about it, when you've got the likes of Rashford, Martial, you've got Greenwood coming through, Chong, will Sanchez get many games anyway? I guess that's something that we'll have to just wait and see. Well, let's move forward from Sanchez then. I think we've all made our views pretty clear on that. I'm going to go over to Twitter quickly, because we did put a tweet out earlier on today saying that we were recording tonight, and that if you had any questions or topic discussions, then let us know. We did. We've had a few, so I'm just going to grab that tweet now. Here it is. So let's start right from the top. What a coincidence. James Buttress at JRButtress19. I think we should sell Lukaku and give Sanchez a run in the team through the middle. I'd also give him the captaincy. He's a guy that thrives on responsibility, and I think it could really kickstart his United career. Matthew, you've already had responded to this one. I can see. Now I scroll down. Quite a discussion there. So what were your thoughts on that?
I think
let's go with the captaincy part. We already know about how you feel about him being in the team.
Absolutely no way.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
At all. Like, I know it's a bit sort of hypocritical considering our last captain was Ashley Young, but the captaincy should be given on merit.
Yes.
They should be the captain. And regardless of whether you think Sanchez could be a good player this season, he's just not done that. And someone who seems to be completely void of confidence, giving him the captaincy, see it being way too much of a risk.
Yeah, I think it'll be unsettling for the rest of the squad as well.
So the captaincy, nope.
I don't know if I just cut into you then, Matthew. I do apologise.
Oh no, I was just saying no thanks to the captaincy.
Andrew, thoughts?
I'm going to go with a simple answer without trying to be a jerk. No. Just no.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Like, I'm sorry, no. We can't do that. We can't give him the captaincy. Just no.
And James, I must apologise if you do actually listen to the podcast. When I laughed when I read your question, I wasn't laughing at your question. I was laughing knowing what Matthew's response was going to be. So yeah, I don't think I was laughing at you. Well, let's move on to the next one. Michael Stow, a regular listener. Appreciate your input and contribution, Michael. Which of the youngsters should be in the first team? How many starts or games should they get? I'll come to you first, Andrew. Or will I? Matthew, I'll come to you.
I'm sorry.
No, there he is.
What was the question? I was right in the middle of a discussion. We've got this unit up in the air right now, and it's about to go on the semi. So, what was the question? I apologize.
Just before I read the question again, I have to admire your dedication to get on the podcast while you're working. Fantastic.
Hey, listen, like I said, the show must go on, and I love you guys. I love what we do, and I want to make sure that we get the best quality content out there. And without me here, let's be honest, we don't have top quality content.
Well, can't
That's a
argue
bold
with
claim.
that. Can't argue with that.
Oh.
You just can't argue with
No,
that.
but in all seriousness, I love being on the show with you guys, and I love being with you guys to talk Manchester United, as is the name of the show.
Brilliant. So the question, Andrew, was which of the youngsters should be in the first team, and how many starts or games should they be getting?
Ooh, that is a great question. So I would say of the youth product that we currently have, the ones that have not gotten serious game time, I would say that it would be Tahith Chong, Angel Gomez, and Mason Greenwood that should be getting the most amount of time. I would say try and get James Gardner a few games, maybe EFL Cup games, maybe the early FA Cup games. Try and get him some first team action. But for the most part, I think we should be seeing a lot of Angel Gomez, Tahith Chong, and Mason Greenwood, and especially Mason Greenwood. I think personally, Mason Greenwood, we should see him starting approximately 20 games to 30 games this season. That's my opinion. I think that if he proves himself, there's no reason why he shouldn't be starting almost every single match for us in the Premier League. As for Tahith Chong and Angel Gomez, I think we'll see them more in bench appearances and then the occasional start in terms of the Premier League. But I think for the most part, you'll see their starts come in the FA Cup and EFL Cup games, and you'll see them probably start a lot in the Europa League games as well. So I would say total games that you'll see for Mason would probably be between all of our competitions. You'll see him involved in approximately 40 to 50 games. I'd say Tahith Chong, we're going to say 30-ish, and probably the same for Angel. That's just my guess.
Matthew?
Oh, I was going to absolutely agree with what Andrew said, even to the amount of games. So I was thinking he needs to start 20 to 30 games, because there's talk of him, starting against Chelsea, and I would 100% start him there. A lot of, rival fans are talking about their young prospects, and those players are 19, 20, 21 years old, whereas Mason Green was 17, shown in pre-season that he seems to be, absolute years ahead of his age. He just seems to be a lot more composed now. 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are actually making a debut. So Greenwood, I wouldn't even consider him a youth player anymore. I'd consider him more of a first-teamer who just happens to be so young. A few games, and I think the Europa League, the only real benefit about us being in that is the fact that we can involve the youth players.
Yeah.
Realistically, we're not really going to put out a starting 11 or a best 11 in the Europa League when we've got games 2 or 3 days later.
And it is something something that Ollie said as well, isn't it? In one of his post-match interviews, he did say that, or may have been a post-match, pre-match.
I think it was against Perth. Oh no, it was against Leeds, where he scored, and then he was asked about Greenwood, and he said a decent chance of getting a fair few minutes against Chelsea. So I think we should at least expect to actually see him in the squad. As for the other players, kind of surprised me, because a few people were saying extremely talented player, but does he really have this the application, and the fact that I think last season or the season before he got a massive injury.
Who was that? Sorry,
for months. Chong.
Oh right, yeah.
Out of the front three of Chong, Gomez, and Greenwood is sort of not the weakest one, but the one he wouldn't maybe expect to go on to be a proper star. Season as well. There was one particular chance where he was on the left wing, and he absolutely burned down to Milan defender and put in absolutely amazing cross into Greenwood, who was so unlucky not to actually score.
Is that when he hit the crossbar?
So Chong's kind of been that surprise package, I think, in terms of all the youth players. I mean, Gomez as well has actually been pretty surprising in terms of his playing style. I think my biggest concern about him was his physicality. I mean, he's basically the height of a child. He's 5'4", 5'5" or whatever. So there was always concerns about him. But I think it was Inter Milan. Oh no, it wasn't Inter Milan. It was Leeds. About and doing that sort of thing that we see from Pogba, where it's a one-on-one to the ball. and he sort of, tries to absolutely body his opponent, getting in there, getting the physical advantage. So to see that from such, a small player, because it adds another dimension to his game and kind of, not doubters, but people who are thinking maybe physically he's not good enough, actually we're starting to think he could actually be up for it.
Yeah,
He's been touted as the next Michael Carrick by quite a lot of people. So in games, he's not really played a lot of minutes, but when he's played, he seems to have done really well. Like that, brilliant strike from outside the box in the first game. That kind of set the tone for him.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere. That did.
Yeah, I think it was just a first shot, and you just thought, nah, screw it, I'll just smack the ball in from 20 yards out. It came absolutely. But yeah, I think out of those 4 players, I don't think we'll see Garner quite as often. I think maybe next season will be his time. But that front 3, I think we'll see quite a lot, especially Greenwood, who really start a lot of games.
Yeah, I think I would agree with both of you in that Chong, Gomez, and definitely Chong and Greenwood. At the very least, I think should be. All 3 of them will be in the first team, but I do think at the very least it should be Chong and Greenwood. I don't like to put an amount of games that I think they should play or start or whatever. It all depends on them. If they want to start 50 games, then they have to put in the effort and show what they can do. They have to keep the likes of Lingard and Martial and Rashford out the team. If they perform better than them, score more goals, then they will start games. That's what I would think anyway. If I was a manager, I'd be playing the players that are going to give more for the team.
Let me ask you this question, because I haven't looked at the questions on Twitter, just so you know, so it might be a question, but have Mason Greenwood, Heath Chong, and Angel Gomez outplayed the senior squad so far? That's my question to you guys.
And that's a very
so far, I would make the argument they have.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good question, because I was thinking exactly the same thing. Let's not get too carried away. It is only pre-season. But saying that, Chong playing down the left, offered in 1 game more than Martial has in 3 games. Greenwood playing off the right has been absolutely fantastic. So yeah, they definitely have been performing much better than the senior players. Doesn't mean to say that they will do, though, when it comes down to the nitty-gritty in the Premier League. Anthony Martial, we know he can switch it on. What we need is for him to switch it on for, at least 3/4 of a season, not a 1/10 of a season. And that goes for all of the players as well. They all need to be switched on. But no, I definitely agree with you, Andrew. I do think that so far the likes of Chong and Greenwood definitely have outplayed and outshone the likes of Lingard, Martial, and you could argue Rashford as well to an extent. But I think Rashford's had a decent pre-season. Matthew, what are your thoughts?
I was sort of thinking about this today, actually, like who are the top 5 players of the pre-season so far? And 100% Greenwood and Chong get in there, and I'd even go as far to say Gomez gets in there. Because really, like you said, Martial, let's face it, he's done nothing. Up front, had 1 game on the wing, I think, and just really hasn't done a great deal. I think Rashford's actually been quite decent. 2 more goals, but yeah. 100% have been, not the surprise packages as such, but they've been pretty much better than almost everyone else apart from Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who even himself is a new signing and only 21 years old.
Yeah.
Are young players. I think we've got quite a few who are actually, could go on to be really good players.
Absolutely. Andrew, did you have anything to add to that, or shall I move on to the next question?
You guys can move on. I think you guys basically covered everything that I was saying. I just think that our youth products so far have been outstanding in this preseason, and I would make the argument that they are the ones pushing for starting time over the likes of Lingard, Mata, so many others. That's honestly the best way to put it. So many others.
No, I would agree. Let's hope this continues. A big test coming up against Spurs on Thursday. I'm sure we'll see the likes of Chong, Greenwood, Gomez get minutes in that game as well. And if they can really perform in that game, then, well, that stands us in good stead for the season coming up. It stands them in good stead for the season coming up. Well, let's move on. We got quite a few tweets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read one out to Matthew, then one to Andrew, then another to Matthew, then another to Andrew, just to keep it moving. So up next is Douglas, Statman Doug. I'm pretty sure this guy's a Liverpool fan. I could be wrong. Should United consider another left back? If Luke Shaw was to get injured, then you would be with 34-year-old Ashley Young. Matthew, I'll come to you on this one.
I remember seeing last week someone mentioning that a squad depth is fine at left back, and the reasons for that was Ashley Young and Marcus Rojo are backups. Then that just shows the sad state of affairs we have in the full-back areas.
Yeah.
Luke Shaw as well. I know he got player of the season and all that and had a really good start this season, but is he really that good? Very much of a decent player who has some good qualities rather than, a really good player. But he's not really that much of an urgent issue to fix as such.
No, there are definitely other areas of the pitch we need to focus on. I think Luke Shaw is one of those players that really divides fan opinion. You've got one half that say, no, he's no good, get rid of him, replace him. And then the others that say, well, actually, hang on a minute. He has got potential. He's still young. He can still, succeed. I think.
Well, let's face it. If we were Real Madrid and we had pretty much an unlimited budget, we would go out and get a better left back.
Yeah.
Mayo's at the moment, we can kind of settle for Luke Shaw.
Yeah, and I think to answer Douglas's question, we really should consider another left back as a backup to Shaw or someone to give Shaw competition. But as we've just said, it's not a priority area at the moment. We do have Diego Dallo who can play at left back, and I would like to think that he would be the first choice after Luke Shaw if he was to get injured. But my gut instinct tells me that it probably would end up being Ashley Young that would be his backup. Let's move forward to another question. This one's for you, Andrew, and this question comes from Robin Kenston, another regular listener. If we sign Maguire and Fernandes, would you say Ollie has been backed properly? I'd say he has, at least money-wise, no matter how much I dislike the Glazers.
So you would have to make the argument that for one summer, for it being one summer, and especially considering the fact that we all know that we aren't going to win the title, I would say yes, he has been back. And it's a good starting point. It's a good building block. But if you were to say, has he been, throw the quotes around it, fully back? He has not been fully back. Because if he was fully back, then he would have a Herrera replacement and a Fellaini replacement on top of getting the additional midfielder that we would need to get. He would be getting the backup left back that we probably need. He would be getting 2 center backs because we'd also couple that we have. That would be true backing. But for what we're doing, for the slow process that we're doing, I would say yes, he has been back well, all things considering. Because a summer of Harry Maguire, Bruno Fernandes, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and a project like Daniel James actually is a pretty decent summer when you get down to looking at it, especially when you consider the fact that our main rivals haven't really brought in many people.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I would agree. I do think that if those 2 players come in, I think there'll be more. I know there's only a couple of weeks left, but I do think that Man United and Ed Woodward are going to pull something out of the bag. I just got that feeling. But yeah, if we were to sign those 2 players, I think that you couldn't complain too much. I don't think anybody realistically expected us to go out and make 5 or 6 signings. I just don't think that's realistic. Very rarely do any clubs do that, even clubs in transition or in a process like we are. I think before the transfer window opened, I was only expecting 3 or 4 signings, and that it would be 2 or 3 windows before Ollie eventually built the actual team he wanted to build and installed that mentality that he wants to install into the players. So yeah, I would agree. I would say that he's been backed good. You know, not perfect, like you say, Andrew, not fully backed, but I don't think you could complain too much with that. So moving forward then, this one's for you, Matthew. It's from Ike Yaguala, another regular. There is no indication or signs from the club that they are getting rid of the dead wood. I mean, how difficult was it to move United players who are surplus to requirements? It's a good question, one that's on many, many lips of United fans. Why are the dead wood not going, Matthew? What are your thoughts?
I honestly don't know. I think there might be the whole sort of thing about wages, because we're obviously known to pay players quite an excessive amount. Like, I think Ashley Young is on some ridiculous, like, a week or something like that. As poor as him, that's an absolute outrage. So in terms of the deadwoods, it all depends on who you actually class as a deadwood. Would probably be Ashley Young, Phil Jones, Matic.
I think the safe thing to say is that there's a lot of it. Essentially,
Yeah, there's a lot of it.
The
There's
list
too
is
much of
endless.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think you're right in terms of wages. I think that is an issue.
Because he's not really deadwood as such, but Alexis Sanchez, going back to him, aren't even in for him. That just shows how ridiculous our wages are. The
Yeah.
performance. Because the fact that they, who are obviously known for paying stupid amounts of money, are not willing to meet Sanchez's demands, just says it all about the wage structure of our club.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing as well is that nobody wants them. I mean, when
Like,
you
they're
look
deadwood for a reason.
yeah, I mean, look at the likes of Jones and Smalling. But then again, I could see teams coming in for Smalling because he's not a rubbish defender. You know, he's not, a top 4 starting centre back, but he would do well in other Premier League teams. But I think that Man United would want to keep hold of him because he would make a decent backup. But you've got players like Rojo and Darmian. I think we could sell them. I think there would be teams interested. We know that there are teams interested in Darmian, and I do expect him to leave. I just don't know why. I don't know. Maybe United want to get all their business, their incomings done first, and then allow players to leave afterwards. Maybe that's what we're going to see. But you could also argue, is there enough time for all that? So I don't know. It's a question that I struggle to answer. You could say, like Matthew's just said, wages, the lack of interest, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but we can't seem to shift players. We look at Valencia and Herrera. They've only left because Herrera wasn't happy with the way he was treated, which is fair enough. Valencia, his contract run down. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, we managed to sell Fellaini, which was good. He's a useful player to a lot of teams, Fellaini, and I think that was what the appeal was with him. But yeah, it's a difficult one. So let's go to the next one. Andrew, if you're still there.
Of course I'm here.
Excellent. This is from MUFC, not PLC. Ask where the line of communication with the fans. Ask where the line of communication with the fans from the Glazers. Why Joel Glazer did... Yeah, I'm going to skip that one.
He's asking about why there's a lack of vision from the board. Why we've not really heard them come out and say much.
Right, let's go to David Makings. What type of impact is needed to get the Glazers to at least comment on the lack of performance, lack of investment, letting Old Trafford fall apart? Do the local fans that attend home games refuse to go? Seeming as so many fans that go to Old Trafford are more commercial fans.
Well, so here's the thing. I think that ultimately right now, we actually are probably seeing the Glazers likely to sell relatively soon. Based on what I'm seeing, and actually from listening to another Manchester United podcast, listening to Phil Brown, who runs a great podcast where he talks about Manchester United, he has a lot more media connections. And hearing the way that he's talked about the club and how he thinks the Glazers are going to sell the club, it actually makes sense. Because I think that the reason why we aren't seeing a lot of money put into the team, and the reason why we're not seeing Old Trafford, renovated to an extent, which it needs to be. I mean, I was just there in October, and I will say that it was actually a little surprising for how nice it looks on the outside, that the inside did not match that to the greatest extent. because I think the outside of Old Trafford looks beautiful, but the inside at times makes me question. I was like, is this the same thing? I still think it's beautiful inside. Don't get me wrong, but just I think that the club is likely to be sold, and I would actually make an argument it could be sold inside of this year, because my company that I work for right now, they actually recently just sold to a very large company that's going to take them public. When you're about to sell a company, you tighten up the budget. And I think that looking at what we've done, our budget has gotten very, very tight. You look at what happened in the obviously we didn't really have anything happen in the January transfer window. Then the window before that, we saw only 2 players brought in, which that could have been down to the fact they were thinking about letting go Mourinho or whatever. But then right now we've only seen 2 players brought in, and it seems like we're not willing to overpay for people. And like with the Lukaku deal, we're not seeing Lukaku sold on a 3-year deal, essentially, where it would be we'd get some money now, some money next year, some money the following year. I think the reason why we're not seeing that is because we're seeing the Glazers' pockets being filled by what's going on currently, and we're seeing them take the most amount of money out of the club possible. And as a business, that makes total sense. But for us as Manchester United fans, it freaking sucks. And I think that's the reason why we're not seeing a lot of communication between fans and the board and the owners and blah, 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 because I think that they are about to sell the club based on what we're all seeing. And it would make a lot of sense that we're about to see the club sold. And I think that I heard Phil mention the Saudis and Amazon as the 2 most likely buyers. Amazon makes a lot of sense because Amazon's trying to stream Premier League games on Amazon Prime. That's what their goal is.
Yeah. Well, so that's all very... Go on.
No, but I was just going to say, I think that could be the reason why we're not seeing a large amount of communication, because ultimately the Glazers just don't care about the fans, the club, anything. They just want to see the most amount of money go into their pockets before they sell.
Well, that's just it. They don't care, and they haven't done from the beginning. And I think even if they weren't about to sell, we still wouldn't hear anything from them. They're not interested in what the stadium looks like. They're not interested if there's leaks all around the stadium. You know, they're just there to make money. That's why they bought the club. That's all they're interested in. So I think even if they weren't about to sell, it would be like that anyway. So go on.
I think that's true. I mean, what I will say though is they have spent a lot of money, but at the same time, that money hasn't been money out of their own pockets. It's been money from the fans. It's the money that they have spent, and the evidence shows it has not been their money. They have not invested 1 penny of their money into it, and that's what's the most upsetting thing is we were bought and sold because of that. It just
Do you know what? I don't have a problem with the Glazers not putting their money into the club. I have no problem with that. We generate enough to look after ourselves. What annoys me is that a lot of the money we generate doesn't get put back into the club. That's what annoys me. I don't care about them putting their own money in or not. We make enough on our own. So
yes, you're right. You are definitely right. We do make enough money on our own. We see that. But like you said, I mean, it's weird that we don't see the amount of money that the club bring in be put back into the club. It doesn't make sense other than the fact that they're leeches trying to suck as much money out of the club they can before they sell. Exactly.
Well, let's move forward then. We've got 2 more left. I think we can just back manage these. So J. Andrew, this is for you, Matthew. Do you think we'll see Martial playing more at number 9 this season, or is that wishful thinking? Alternatively, do you think he is suited to leading the line under Ollie's system? Love the podcast, guys. Thank you, J. Andrew. I'm just going to call you Andrew. I'm sure your name's just Andrew. That's for you, Matthew.
It's a difficult one because we talked about this in the last podcast.
We did.
Yeah, about Martial playing as a lone striker. He just doesn't really seem to work out. Gaps in the box where he really should be. But and then you've got no players running from midfield. So I think playing him as a lone striker at least probably isn't the way to go. If you're going to play him up front, you've got to play him next to someone who's going to actually stay central. So even in some regards, like Lukaku, if we were to actually get some use out of him, then I think him and Martial up front could actually be a decent partnership. But for me, I think he's better in the left wing, as inconsistent as he is, because he seems to have more attributes. Like the ability just to take the ball, just decide, you know what, I'm going past you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And it's like I've said. Oh, go on.
Yeah. Ole's system is off the ball and it's pressing. One thing you don't really get with Martial is work rate. Now, I know you don't really need a player to be absolutely running their socks off every single minute when they're up front. And Martial, to me, doesn't seem like someone who's going to really do that. He's going to wait to actually get the ball rather than create that chance himself.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, as I've said many times, and I can only go by what I've seen from Martial. I mean, yes, he has scored a goal or two from playing at number 9, but 90% of the time when he hasn't played as number 9 that much. He did once or twice, maybe even 3 or 4 times over the last couple of seasons, probably a bit more than that. And what I've noticed with him when he plays in that position, and I can think back to myself now during these games, thinking to myself, what are you doing? He's always drifting out to the left.
Yep.
He can't help himself. That's his position. And he leaves this gaping hole in the middle where the opposition centre-halves have got nothing to do. They're under no pressure. There's no one on their shoulder. And he just drifts out to the left. But that's not a complaint on his, against him. That's where he wants to play. That's where he's more comfortable. He naturally drifts out to the left. And I think we've seen the best of his football that breakthrough season coming in from the left. All those goals he scored coming in from the left. And so I don't think it'd be wishful thinking to see him. I mean, I know to a lot of people it is, but for me, from what I've seen of him, he's not a number 9. He's definitely a left winger. And yeah, that's what I think on that. I mean, he's always the sort of player that likes to pick the ball up and run at a defender. Then what you want is for somebody, especially from your forwards, is to be on that back line, making runs in behind and spreading them out. That's what you want from that type of player. But he's the type of player that likes to come deep. That's why he thrived under Van Gaal, because we always very defensive under Van Gaal, and it was a case of we played football with his philosophy. It was in phases, wasn't it? So you'd have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. That was how he played football, and Martial thrived in that system. Since then, he's had moments under Mourinho. In fact, when Mourinho publicly, I won't say slated him, but he spoke him down. Let's say we got a reaction from Martial, and he went on a really good run. Again, playing from the left. So I think that that's where he should play, not as a number 9. So final question then. I'll put this to both of you. It's just going to be basically a quick one. So it comes from Donny X63. Can we get top 4? I go to you first, Andrew.
Absolutely, we can. We need to have the last 2 rumored signings come in. That's my opinion. That will be an absolute key to top 4. But then, even if we don't get those, I still believe it's possible based on the youth products that we currently have, that I think we've got the people in place to be able to take us to that next level if they all gel and grow together with what we currently have. But if we bring in Harry Maguire and Bruno Fernandes, I'll go as far as say I can almost guarantee that we will reclaim a top 4 spot, because we will have the squad in place to be able to do that.
And Matthew?
I think it depends on 2 main things, one of which is signings. Like Andrew said, if we get Bruno and Maguire, then I think we're not necessarily favourites out of the rest of the... But I'd say we've got a decent chance. And what also will gauge how well we'll do this season is that Spurs game. Because obviously Spurs are probably the best team in England. Obviously Man City and Liverpool are way ahead. And then you've got the best of the rest, and I think Spurs are definitely at the top there. Conviction, and actually get a good result there, and not only a decent result, but a convincing performance, then I think it will get our spirits up a bit. those two main factors. But I think it's a case of can we? Absolutely. Will we? A few factors that kind of come into that, and I'm not entirely optimistic. 4th or 5th this season. Because Chelsea, I mean, they've just hired Frank Lampard. Kind of like Ole in some regards in the fact that he's pretty inexperienced. He's never managed in the Premier League before. So that could either be an absolutely amazing season for them or a disaster or anything in between. So it's pretty hard to actually gauge how they'll do. They're just a dead club. Don't see them getting in the top 4 whatsoever, probably not even in the top 6. Other clubs as well, how they do. I think we're actually kind of, in some regards, lucky that Chelsea have had this transfer ban. I mean, they've got so little money that basically is a transfer ban for them.
Yeah. Well, I look, I think I mirror your comments, Matthew. I think, can we? Yes. Will we? Again, it all depends. It all depends. I mean, one thing that we're working on at the moment in this pre-season is the team's fitness. That's going to play a huge factor in how we get on next season. I think if the likes of Chong and Greenwood and Gomez, who are used to that and are fit and played that brand of football in the youth setup, I think they could add that little boost that we might need, especially in the later stages of the season if they're not playing that much at the beginning of the season. And of course, for players coming in, they probably the clubs that they've come from they're probably a lot fitter than a lot of our players are. I mean, you think of it, before Ollie came in last season, I think we were bottom of the table for distance covered across the whole team, which just goes to show that across Europe, we're probably, compared to other teams in Europe, we're probably right down the bottom as well. So I think that aspect could be, I want to say rectified, but close enough next season. So it all depends. Like you said, Matthew, you've got to think about the other teams as well. Arsenal don't look like they're going to be strengthening that much. If anything, they're getting weaker. They've lost. They're losing Laurent Koscielny. They've lost Aaron Ramsey. I think they're on the brink of signing a couple of midfielders, but I don't know. And it's Arsenal. Come on. So I think top 4 is ours to lose. And I'll tell you something. Go back about 2 months ago. In my head, I'm thinking we're going to struggle to stay in the top 6 next season. But obviously, with the youth coming through, making a huge impact, we've made a couple of signings. I'm sure there's going to be a couple more. There's an air of positivity around the club now at the moment. I'm thinking, yes, we can get top 4. Well, I think that about wraps it up for tonight. I think we've been going for approximately an hour, I would say, probably. Wonder if it says anywhere somewhere. 47 minutes, that's not too bad. So Matthew, thank you for joining me tonight. Would you like to give out your Twitter details?
Yeah, sure. On Twitter it's @_Matthew, so _MAFFOO, and check out Offside Graphics as well, because I'm doing 15% off everything for this month. So I better get in there quickly.
Oh yeah. And Andrew as well, thank you for joining us, especially whilst you're working. Appreciate it greatly. Would you like to give out your Twitter details?
Absolutely. Redbearded Red on Twitter. Give me a follow. I talk to Manchester United primarily, but we also talk some Phoenix Rising. Let's go Phoenix Rising. 10-0. We're on a 10-0 run right now. It's one of the best runs in the USL. And we're 12-0 on Dollar Beer Night, people. 12-0 on Dollar Beer Night. You can't beat Dollar Beer Night. So
Greatest stat in football.
Greatest stat in football, absolutely. But, I mean, thank you for having me on. You guys, if you want to, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's The Redbearded Red on YouTube. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. My Twitter's good enough.
Brilliant stuff. Yes, thank you again to those guys for joining me. So Ash is going to be away for a little while, but I'm sure he'll drop back on for a podcast or two in the not too distant future. So you can follow myself. It's @PaulGardnerLP. Be sure to follow the podcast account @United.
Isn't it Paul Gardner MU now?
Did I just say LP?
You did.
You did.
I haven't said that for a while, but yeah, it's @PaulGardnerMU. So yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. @PaulGardner. at Paul Gardner MU. The podcast account is at United Stand Pod. Don't forget to follow at United Stand MUFC as well. That's the main United Stand Twitter account. The podcast will be on YouTube, so you can search Talking Manchester United podcast in YouTube or United Stand podcast in YouTube. You should be able to find it. Subscribe, like, give us some comments as well. This is the first podcast we are recording in Discord, so I'm hoping this comes out okay. Obviously, we'll make some improvements if necessary. So feedback, please, to those listening. If you've listened this far, I'll be very surprised. But yeah, let us know what you think. Does it sound good, essentially? So yeah, thank you, everybody. We'll be back. I think it will be next Tuesday again. But keep an eye on the Twitter account for updates. Thank you very much. Very much. Very much. Very much.